the foods that we customarily consume on the night of Rosh Hashanah. So the Gemara, once again, Rosh Hashanah is full of surprises. The Gemara makes an interesting comment. It says that one who wants to see a siman bracha, you want to see a sign of blessing, I mean a good blessed year, you should be careful not to omit any of the following. And the Gemara gives us a list. Pomegranates came later, but we have dates. We have, the Gemara says in Aramaic, silqa, tamare, karte, lubia, which is, rubia is how it's referred to in Aramaic. We call it lubia in Arabic. We'll explain this in a second. We've adopted a couple of other, and qara, sorry, that's the fifth one. Qara, so what do they mean? There are different customs, different traditions. Fruits and vegetables just didn't grow in certain places. But the Gemara said, isn't it strange that if you want a blessed year, you have to be careful about the food on your table? So this maybe explains some of the typical Jewish OCD when it comes to hosting people and putting all kinds of different things on the table. Like, you almost get lost in the cooking. Or I should say the spirituality gets lost in the sauce, like literally lost in the sauce, in the sense that you get so, like the Haghim are about nothing but cooking. You cook so much, it's expensive, you buy things, you get mad at the kids for getting in the way of cooking. It's like the whole thing's about food and cooking. Very easy to lose track of what's going on. But the Gemara says this is, like, my blessing for the next year depends on this. And if I happen not to have leaks, you know, who dies if that's the case? So there's a whole discussion about this. First of all, we'll get the species. Species themselves are karate, all right? Karath in Arabic, leeks in modern English, pol in Francawi. Silqa. Silqa is probably a reference to spinach. What happened is that in Arabic, silq refers to beets, and this became confused with the Aramaic silqa. The Arabs just had a word and didn't know what to do with it. They stuck it on the sugar beets, and that's not what it's referring to. So there are communities where they used beet greens, or the beet leaves. They look kind of like purple celery with green leaves. Pretty plant, but yeah.
In our family, we use Swiss chardis, I think.
Yeah, it's a relative. I think it's
I think it's Swiss chard in the
relative of something with phones today. Relative of the spinach family, distant cousins, but ben'amul. So there are communities that eat barba. They eat red beets, sugar beets, with or without the leaves. But the reference probably was to spinach. We have rubia. Rubia are black-eyed beans. That seems to be clear without... So, parenthetically, very few Ashkenazim actually do this, which is fascinating because it's right out of the Talmud. It's not like the Sfaradim make this up. It's in the Talmud. This is what the Talmud says. The Gemara says you should do this. And I guess just because some of these things didn't grow in northern latitudes, probably they fell out of favor, or other things became popular. Apples, for example, which are originally from the Ural Caucasian mountains, sweet apple, what they call apples today. So, a member of the rose family, they didn't grow in the Middle East. So apples with honey is actually probably an Ashkenazi tradition that became popularly adopted. In fact, the Sfaradim didn't even have apples for the most part. They cooked quince instead. You ever seen this?
I thought it was a palm.
Quince.
Oh, we do it in the
They cook them in sugar.
Yeah.
They're tasty. They're kind of like pears when they're cooked.
Very good, yeah.
Yeah, they're inedible when they're raw. You can shred them, but they're otherwise tasty. So that came much later. What the Gemara describes is tamare, which is dates, karote, which is leeks, rubia, the black-eyed beans, silqa, which is probably spinach, and qara. Qara is probably gourds or squash. Zucchini, something from that family. They'll have very similar leaves, and the fruits are a little bit different.
But
So
they had black-eyed beans in the Middle East?
they're originally from the Middle East.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
They're all like from down south?
No, there are dozens and dozens of species. By the way, black-eyed beans are probably some of the tastiest beans on the planet.
Yeah.
And that's like black-eyed peas.
Yeah, frijoles, they call us, no?
It's a band.
Yeah, it's black-eyed beans are very good.
They're delicious. Garlic, a little bit of salt and pepper. What else?
Either with
Where do you get them?
white rice. Absolutely.
A little bit of olive oil. I can eat these things by the kilo. I
Are
can
they
say
like
that.
long or
No,
No,
round?
sure, they sell them in the supermarket.
Little white
Probably
beans.
like in a bag.
Oh, they're white?
Little
Yeah,
white
the
beans
bean
with a black
little black dot in the
little
center.
black dot on them, so they're called black-eyed beans. Super tasty. I love
yeah.
that. I can eat it with a shovel. Anyway, they're great. They're great. So they're called rubia in Arabic. They call them lubia, and that became a popular reference by the Sfaradim. We'll talk about this in a second. So later generations tacked on different things. Believe it or not, the Ashkenazim mentioned first the concept of eating lungs on Rosh Hashanah.
What?
Eating what?
Lungs.
Who doesn't eat lungs? Like,
I never had
you're looking
lungs.
at me funny.
Americans for a start.
Right,
Lungs?
correct. The USDA does not permit the consumption of lungs, which is a shame.
Canada does.
Very tasty.
When I
as
was
does,
little, my mother made lungs.
yeah, well, I don't know that the USDA put a fatwa on lungs before the 60s or 70s, but yeah, there was. It's totally irrational too, of all the things that you should forbid. But yeah, no part of the respiratory tract is permitted for consumption. You have to remove the trachea and everything behind the tongue, between the tongue and the end of the lungs. The heart you can eat, the rest of it you can't.
Why is that?
Because the USDA is stupid. So,
I have to ask my
It's hard
mom.
to
She would probably
detect.
know.
I mean, it's a government agency that,
No,
that
my mom would.
implies a certain degree of incompetence and stupidity. It's-
My mom
I
would
hear
like-
that.
My mom,
as opposed to all the other government agencies that are perfectly well run, like the IRS.
My mom's a dentist and she
Yeah.
she taught had an anatomy while she was in dental school, so like other people. So I would not ask her if
Ask
there's
her.
any, if
There
there's
has-
anything that like.
But these people can be reasoned with.
bacterial or
No,
something.
anthrax.
Anthrax.
It's technically a respiratory thing. These people can't be reasoned with. There's no. If they had a good reason in 1920, it never changed. In England, you can get them. Actually, in England, they call them lights. Like light, that which is light, as opposed to heavy,
Yeah.
which is what we use the Hebrew word for liver. It's heavy. It sinks.
Covered.
Come in, yeah. They call them lights.
Liver.
Why lights? So the custom is, as is the prayer that accompanies this particular item, is we pray that Hashem sheta'ir alenu b'toratecha. So we use re'ah like re'iyah, like to see, and so we ask that Hashem il-ha'ir is to shine light, that our eyes should be illuminated by Hashem's Torah. وتهي השנה הזאת قلا علينا كرئة. And this year should be light for us, like just like the lungs are light. It's like
No,
the light.
for
Very
Lungs
interesting.
are light?
Oh yeah, they float. You can't get them to
Oh,
sink.
really?
Yeah. Well, they're full of air.
They're
That's
like
part
air
of the trick.
sacs.
Yes, very tasty. So it's the of the physical components of the human body, it's the least dense, which is interesting because it's also air as opposed to the stomach and food that we eat, the intestinal tract. We have the respiratory tract, which is like lighter than most other matter. Interesting. Anyway, some communities have the custom to eat sesame, and in parts of North Africa they would just throw it into the quince and eat it that way too. So it's two customs for the price of one. There were communities where in Morocco, for example, their customarily ate carrots too.
Yeah,
These
but
are-
Carrots, yeah.
Marmalade or preserved carrot.
my grandmother cooked them with cumin and like lemon juice or vinegar.
My
Actually, maybe
grandmother
Shana
cooked
she
them
did.
with sugar and with a bit of
Yeah.
I think cloves.
Usually she would make them with lemon juice or vinegar, and maybe on Rosh Hashanah she made them sweet. I can't remember that for me.
Is there any communities that eat eggplant, like Rosh Hashanah?
Not that I'm aware of. But so here's the thing, and the head of a ram. That the Shulchan Aruch mentions we should eat the head of a ram, not a baby lamb, the head of a ram, with the skin on and everything. So, very
It's
sticky.
supposed to be like the head,
broth.
not the tail.
Yes, that's last week's parasha. Where if we listen to we observe the mitzvot, listen to Hashem, we should be on top and not on bottom. We should be the head and not the tail.
But they started adapting it using the
Fish.
head of a fish.
Yeah, I've seen that. They do that.
That's why you don't have the
So
head of a ram.
there are lambs that are adapted to cold weather. Maybe the Ashkenazim just couldn't afford them. It could be that poverty was so widespread in Northern Europe they just couldn't have. I don't know. And not that the head is like the most sought after part. It makes a delicious stew. Oh yeah, you could with the skin on and you burn the hairs off. It makes a delicious stew. So at any rate, you can eat the tongue, the brains, the eyes, a little bit of meat behind the neck, the cheeks.
Saurians love you.
There's-
What if you're a vegetarian?
Was that?
What if you're a vegetarian?
My condolences.
What?
Offer my heartfelt condolences. So where do these customs come from? The 5 that are mentioned in the Gemara, clearly we've added onto them. I don't think anybody only eats those 5. So the Magen Abraham writes like this. Magen Abraham, basically, I believe he lives in the 17th century. in Poland. He writes that the custom was to take foods that have some kind of symbolism to them, things that symbolize good or positive concepts, either the etymology of the thing or the anatomy of it, like the pomegranate. We ask that we should be full of merits, like the pomegranate is full of seeds. The pomegranate has nothing but seeds in it, that's all it is. There's no flesh per se, it's just that seeds have a little bit of juice on them. So either it's the anatomy of the fruit or the name of it, and he adds even the name in non-Jewish tongues, like in Yiddish or in Arabic. So the Sephardim, we say when we eat the rubia, which has now become the lubia, the black-eyed beans, we say sheyurbu zechuyotenu utelabevenu. We use both the resh bet etymology and the lamed bet etymology. Resh bet like rav, many, our merits should be many, and telabevenu we should be dear, cherished, like beloved by Hashem. So, what's the idea? The entire idea is these associations, this symbolism. In other words, it's not because I ate dates that I'm going to have a good year, because if that were the case, I would live off of them. It's just not the secret to success. In other words, the secret behind the secret is that it's the thought, it's the thinking, it's the desire to make positive connections, to make positive associations, and to link things together, and to give it a little bit of a positive push, right? Which is really interesting. We just spoke about depression a short while ago. Rav Zelig Pliskin happens to be one of my favorite motivational speakers, right? First of all, Rav Zelig Pliskin lives in Yerushalayim. First of all, because he's on 50,000 watts all the time. The man's got a smile that just won't quit. Everywhere he goes, he's got nothing but energy. It's contagious. And so he's written a few books on depression. His whole approach to depression, I was taking classes in social work and psychology at the time, which was great because to have someone like him come and speak on this topic was we'll talk about the psychological aspects, the social aspects, the chemical aspects. And here all of a sudden he comes in and says, no such thing as depression, just smile and be happy. He talks about smiling and doing happy things.
Know what that means.
Right, no, well, his point, it was more sophisticated than that. His point was that if you believe you're in a depression, you probably are. And if you believe the depression is real, it probably is. And if you believe there's no way out, there probably isn't. And on the other hand, if you believe, conversely, that you're a good person, you'll be one. And if you believe that you have potential, you'll probably realize it. If you believe that you'll find a solution, you'll find one. This is something I learned when I was had the good fortune of doing shimush, of apprenticing, training by a lot of rabbis from different backgrounds, different cultures. I really enjoyed that. A little bit of a salad bar as far as how to solve problems and get things done. So one of the rabbis that was very helpful to me, Rav Gabriel Goldman, originally from Argentina, but he moved to Israel, and he works a lot in Shlom Bayit and fertility. He's an expert in this particular field. So he once told me this is how the only way you can really solve a Shlom Bayit problem, like a domestic dispute. Husband thinks this, wife thinks that. Probably they're both crazy. That's usually the case. The question is, how do you get the crazy out of the picture and get them back to interacting like normal people? So if you come from a place of anxiety, like if you're nervous, so a young rabbi who's never really dealt with these things, kind of nervous, unsure, lacking confidence, and you're afraid of the problem. You're afraid there is a problem. You're afraid that there's an undeniable dispute. There's a fight going on, something's wrong, and we have to tackle this beast. That you're probably not going to succeed. You can show some good faith and some goodwill, but you're probably not going to succeed. You need to come from a place where there are no disputes, from a place where there are no arguments, from a place where everyone loves everyone, and we're all happy eating gummy bears.
It says in denial.
It's denial. Yeah, there's a good kind of denial.
Yeah.
I deny Yetzer Hara the right to determine my fate. I deny Yetzer Hara the right to decide for me what I'm going to do, how I'm going to sound, how I'm going to look, and how I'm going to feel. I am in absolute and total denial of anyone having power over me but me. But you have to believe in it. So he started, it was very simplistic. It was like a very funny thing. But the truth is, and it was also a backhanded crack at all of our super overly sophisticated explanations for our psychoses. And it's all imaginary. You can make massive revolutionary changes in your life if you just believe in good things and do them.
Yeah, but
And then you become a
it's
good person who does good things, and then you're happy and you're not depressed
It's
anymore.
not unjust to believe something that powerful. Takes a lot. It's not unjust.
Absolutely.
It's not like just turn
The
light on
Gemara,
and
the
light's
Gemara has a
on.
beautiful expression about this. The Gemara says that Moshe Rabbeinu, Chosh Devarim, at some point when he gives us quite a bit of rebuke. It's not like it's all, candy canes and gumdrops. So at some point he says in Chosh Devarim, V'ata Yisrael, like Ma Hashem mevakesh mimecha, kim li'rat Hashem, etc. So he says so at the end of the day, what is Hashem really asking of you? Just to fear Him and to love Him? Come on, guys, what's the big deal? What's your problem? So the Gemara says, really, Moshe? Let's spend your whole life, 120 years, perfecting your love of Hashem and your fearful respect of Hashem. And so the Gemara says, true, for him it wasn't a big deal. He, almost as if to say, at this moment, he almost lost his perspective and really didn't get what makes it difficult for us to love Hashem and do the right thing. So when you're there, you don't see the difficulty, but that's a lot more clever than it. It's not like, Moshe had a shortcoming because he forgot how to think like your average person, garden variety, run-of-the-mill Jew. No, the point that he was making is, if you were where I am, none of these things are a big deal. There are no struggles or challenges here. Do the right thing, be happy about it, don't care what people say, and keep on doing more of it. You've got successes, and you're building on your successes, all of a sudden you're a super successful person. People will come to you for advice on how to get out of depression. So, when you come from a place where you're thinking good, you're thinking positive, there is a solution, we just haven't found it yet, you're much more likely to find a solution than if you start out, this stinks, this is terrible, there is no way out, we're all going to die. That's a hopeless situation. These people are not helpful to have around when you have a real challenge or a real issue that you would like to resolve. So resolutions come from where? They come from a place where things can be solved. Which sounds very simplistic, you open up the can be solved box, take out a solution. No, the reality is, when you're thinking positively, your brain operates differently. You think more optimistically, you think more creatively. I know there's a solution, I haven't found it yet. I will humble myself. I'm going to search, I'm going to compare, I'm going to contrast. I want to see if there's anything I know that could work, anything I remember that has worked, anything I can concoct that might help. Even a distraction. Sometimes just distracting someone from being upset about their problems is helpful. Bikur Cholim, we go to visit the sick. That's very often what we do. I remember when one of my, Akiva, my oldest, was little, now he's 12. He's huge. So he was crying hysterically. I don't even know about it. I think every kid cries hysterically. No one knows why. So it's what they do for a living. It was getting ridiculous. He was crying a lot over, I don't even know what it was, and he probably was at this age, a year and a half or two, where he wasn't really good at putting his finger on it and explaining to you why he wasn't happy. He just kind of cried a lot. So after I tried every trick in the book, right, holding him on his stomach, putting the stomach on the shoulder, walking, we tried in the carriage, he was crying hysterically and taking these really deep breaths. And at some point I had this funny creative thought, I'm going to do something really bizarre, but I'm going to catch him off guard. I'm going to come out of left field and just squash this thing. So I just decided spontaneously, this is funny, we'll have to edit this out. I decided spontaneously, I'll go to jail.
Suffocated.
No, I didn't shake him, I didn't hit him with a switch. I decided that while he was gasping in order to let out these horrible blood-curdling shrieks, I was just going to blow really, really hard right into his face. I don't know how the thought crossed my mind. So he's sitting there gasping and he breathed faster than he was supposed to because the air
It's
came.
an idea coming from despair.
Yeah, that's I went through the whole encyclopedia and nothing I could find. I had to try to give him something sweet, something hot, something milk, oatmeal.
That's what you did is called the pattern interrupt in neuro-linguistic programming.
Yes, there is.
Interrupt the pattern.
You interrupt the pattern, you prevent him from continuing to perpetuate behaviors that are self-destructive or just being in a pattern of thought that he can't break. It's this...
And you blew into his face?
I just blew as hard as I could.
Well, it's not so bad. If what you say you're going to go to jail, it's not.
Yeah, no, I didn't hit him.
You shocked him.
It shocked the daylights out of him.
Right.
And he stopped crying. He's like, I was really into that crying thing. It was fun for a while, and now I thought about it, and I don't like it anymore. It's like you got my mind in another place. I think you're bizarre, and if I'm quiet, you leave me alone, and that'll make us all happy. That people like you should be incarcerated. So So effectively, there's this the necessity for positive thought and positive thinking, and it's all totally in your hands. Sometimes it helps to have someone explain these things to you, but really it's all in your hands. So what's the idea behind the Gemara telling you these things all have positive aspects to them? So it's true, if you analyze these fruits, they all appear in the scriptures in some form or another, or they appear in the Mishnah, the Gemara, the popular Talmudic culture, and they all have interesting references to them. Sure, beans reproduce at a crazy rate. I mean, you take one and they'll produce 1,000. And dates grow in the middle of the desert in the most bitter, harsh, unhospitable environment, the sweetest things on the planet. And Tamar, the Zohar reads beautifully, Tamar, like the end of bitterness. If you're in the desert, you would think life doesn't exist here, and then all of a sudden you find this sweet, nutritious fruit. And you could say the same for qarra, squash. They grow very quickly. So you could make some of these associations and kind of figure out where they were coming from. And leeks, I don't know, they're green, they're seeing sprout straight up, and they're very tasty with garlic and olive oil. So the idea is that we actively pursue this whole symbolism. We actively pursue this association. I'm going to flex my brain and look for positive things and make positive connections. My year is not going to be a great year because I ate leeks, even though they're very tasty. My year is going to be a great year because when I eat, I'm going to think about what I eat and what it does, how it grows, what it looks like, what it's called. I'm looking for positive association, looking for positive connections. And so the prayers that we recite before eating these things, which should be the will before you, the Eternal One, our judge of our forefathers, that, the year should be successful, and we incorporate the name of the thing in it. So this symbolism is the key. These associations are the key, and it's not limited to Rosh Hashanah. You can do this all year long. Just the Rosh Hashanah, we're especially careful about starting out this way. In the Gemara, the expression is simana miltahi. Symbolism, like signs, they have some substance to them. It's not just symbolic. There's a reason that we do things, a reason that we associate certain things with certain occasions. Our memory is very associative. In fact, the whole Talmud is that way. Rabbi so-and-so taught us something. Here's how he's saying in his name, as if it has nothing to do with the previous one. Just if you mention his name, so here's his name again. And here's a dispute between two rabbis. They also disputed something else, which is related, not related. And the Gemara has these long streams of consciousness that meander through all sorts of different topics in spirituality. It's all related and connected. You just have to find the connections. So this is like the hidden secret behind this. This is why communities continue to look for things with positive symbolisms and incorporate them. So if we live in a northerly latitude where we can't get ram's heads so easily, or where dates don't grow because they don't tolerate frost, at very least we can take something local, figure out something positive, figure out something fruitful, spiritual, productive, and make that connection, make that association.
What about watermelon? They don't use watermelon.
Good question. I don't know. They definitely existed in the time of Tanakh, and they're certainly native to Mediterranean, Middle East. Don't know to say why they haven't been incorporated. Not to say that they can't be, but apparently they just weren't. They didn't make the traditional cut. They weren't one of those traditional foods. Yeah, there are lots of fruits, lots of vegetables, nuts, etc. You could say the same thing for. But the general idea is that it's not so much the obsession with these particular items. It's more the positive connections, good associations, think good will be good kind of mentality. That's really what we're missing throughout much of the year. In fact, I'll probably conclude with this because I also have to run, but the funk that a lot of us fall into during the rest of the year is like, the year has been kacha, it's been this way, it's been that way, it's been good, it's been bad. I'm not where I wish I would be. If we could break those kinds of moods, and think, I still have such and such number of days or weeks or months left in this year, I can do fabulous, wonderful, fantastic things with it. I can break all my previous records. I can turn the world inside out. The year would be a lot more positive. Instead of waiting for Hashem and waiting for reality in the stock market and the weather to decide what my mood's going to be like, if we do manage to kind of get in the habit of thinking positive, making connections and associations, doing that spiritual math, the spiritual dirty work, so to speak, of like seeing things, connecting the good things, connecting good things to more good things, we probably will have much more control over our destiny and our year, for that matter, than if we kind of let the year act on us. and decide for us.
What about the whole aspect of like the higher you get, the greater the Yetzer Hara is, and the greater there's a test, and there's like always like some negativity that you have to overcome, even though you, like, I found like...
As you grow, your good and bad instincts will grow with you, which is the way life is. We don't shy away from the challenge. None of us say, I'd rather be mediocre because I just don't want challenges in my life. That's actually the definition of depression. Depression is the loss of any aspiration or any motivation to do any more than you're doing right now, which tends to decay from one day to the next when you're not doing anything. So if I was in school and I had a rough semester, I could take a leave of absence, and that can become a dropout, and that becomes bad habits, bad connections. It becomes a cycle.
Philosopher.
Right, exactly.
Philosopher.
A poet or a philosopher or a drug addict. So it's very easy to lapse into these kinds of
No, I don't mean
moods
because
and-
of, like one time I had this phenomenal Rosh Hashanah with the most phenomenal davening and most phenomenal singing, and it was so high. It was unbelievable. It was actually at Kol HaNeshama right next door to you.
Sure.
It was so high, and then like 2 days later, something really horrible happened. I felt as if it was almost like taking away all the joy.
It's a test. It's a test. That's your test.
It was
You reach a really big high.
awful. Like,
You have the tools to
I
deal
couldn't
with it.
recover the joy.
So this is the challenge. Nobody wants to believe that we'd rather be mediocre and hide from real challenges in life. The challenges are there to make us grow, to make us strive, to make us want to do more. So we don't invite superfluous challenges upon ourselves, but we do look for opportunities to grow and do more, and that's how they come. So yeah, there's a little bit of that. We want big things to happen, and even if it means we have to fill the big boy and big girl shoes, we're gonna do it. We're not gonna shy away from the challenge. Tov. Halakhah, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to reach out an hour later.
Can I, are we walking?
I'm welcome. Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
A pleasure.
Just a quick question on the first part. You know when you
Please.
said like, we made Yetzer Hara, etc.